Hello and welcome to the My Authentic You podcast, where your emotional and spiritual health matters. Welcome back to session 8 of our podcast. We're excited. It's 8 sessions, guys. If you have yet to listen to any of the other sessions, please do so. Please like, subscribe, and do all that business. Let us know what you think about the podcast, the topics that we talk about. Follow us on Instagram, My Authentic You, right, Renee? Yes. Renee's out in the background over here, producer Renee, and he's no longer a stranger to the pod. We see him often. Kevin Hockenberry.
Hello.
We need more than that.
More than that?
Yeah.
Hello there.
All right, so you have 2 guests with you.
Oh, my guys.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know that's what I used to call my toys and stuff when I was a kid? My guys.
I know you've told me that.
These are muscles.
Okay. If you're listening to us on Spotify, you can hop over to the YouTube channel, right? And you can see what these guys look like.
Yeah, like this guy here, he's chilling. He's just like, I'll get you, right? Okay. And this guy here, he's like, well, I'll get you too, but I got 6 arms. Can you imagine having 6 arms?
That would be so helpful.
Yeah, I guess if they all, you can get them to work in synchrony, right?
If they extended.
Yeah. Anyway, when I was a kid, I loved these guys. Used to be able to get in a little 4-pack or something at Eckerd drugstore or whatever.
Eckerd, drop a thumbs up if you remember Eckerd's.
Eckerd drugstore, yeah.
Eckerd's, right?
Yeah,
with an S.
They were bought out by CVS or Walgreens or somebody.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, when I was a kid, man, I begged my mom to get me a couple of those, and so I ended up having tons of these little guys. They're cool, and they made a little thing where you could fight them and stuff, like a little wrestling ring. Anyway,
Why did you choose to bring those 2 to the pod?
Why not? Just a little. I always like having a little something next to me,
A little safety.
Well, I knew you'd say no if I wanted to bring Carson, our dog. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Why would you want to bring a dog onto the pod?
No, the question is, and you know what the question is, why would you not want to bring your dog? See?
First of all, the amount of hair.
There's room right there.
No.
Oh, she's good.
No, the amount of noise and
Let me tell you something.
that would be happening.
A life without dog hair is a life without a dog.
Exactly, and it's a better life.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
This past weekend, we started a sermon series, right?
We did.
Am I driving? Can I drive a little bit?
Nope.
Or no, you drive?
Nope.
Okay.
Right before we started, I said, I got this. You're going to drive in a second.
Well, you said I'm not a guest anymore, so I figured I could help myself to the refrigerator.
She said you weren't a stranger. Yeah, I said you weren't a stranger.
Not a stranger.
Yeah,
okay.
It doesn't mean you're the boss.
Okay.
So sit down. So today's pod is going to be a little bit shorter than normal. But we started a series at our church, Authentic Church. And you can follow the church at My Authentic Church on Instagram if you haven't.
And Facebook.
And Facebook, yep.
That's still a thing for some people.
Still a thing for my husband.
Hey, there's reels on Facebook.
There are reels on Facebook that come from TikTok and
Whatever.
Instagram.
Still there.
But, give us a follow because we post things regularly and you can keep up with us if you care to. If not.
It's also our website, www.myauthenticchurch.com.
Yeah, that's right. It's a pretty cool website. But we started a new series, and it is called... Here you go. What is it called, babe?
Isn't It Romantic?
Isn't It Romantic? And we are tackling... It's 4 weeks, and we're tackling several questions each week. And the first sermon, or the first, I guess, week... was last Sunday, and we didn't get to tackle the second question.
Yeah, we only got to the one. Well, when you start a sermon series, a lot of people don't realize this. There's always about 5 or 10 minutes, sometimes more, of setup of the actual series.
Yes.
And then there's only a little bit of time left to do the sermon.
Yeah.
And we wrestled with the question of, I've fallen out of love with my spouse, right?
Well, all the questions start with the word help.
Yes.
Help. And it was help. What do I do? I've fallen out of love with my spouse.
Yeah, so go to our YouTube channel if you'd like to watch that sermon.
Yes.
Stacy and I tag teamed that one. We each, shared the microphone a little bit, and then there's a second question that we did not get to?
We didn't. The first question was my question that I kind of tackled. It was my question that, you know, it was my voice a lot. And because we didn't get to the second one, we want to get to it on the pod. And this is the question that you were going to ask, that you were going to lead on this past Sunday. And that question is this: help, I can't get over what my spouse did. How do I forgive and move on?
Wow.
Yeah.
That is a very, very difficult question. When I think about the question we wrestled with this past Sunday, you know, the reality is these questions are so weighty that we really could spend hours. You know, I mean, this is the type of thing people go to like counseling for, right? Marriage counseling and therapy, different things like that to process some of these questions. And so I think we did the best. I think we did a really good job on Sunday handling that question as best we could, but still it was about a 35-minute sermon. I mean, the feedback we got was we could have got another hour or whatever. I think people were really engaged and listening to what we were saying. And so I think the same thing with this question, man, I can't get over what my spouse did. How do I forgive and move on? And when we were writing this question, I was thinking, man, there's so many different things that a spouse could do to another spouse to really hurt them. It could be things of a sexual nature. It could be things of, you know, an affair, an emotional affair. It could be finances. You know, I've heard horror stories of one of the spouses had access to, you know, the credit cards and just really ran them up. And all of a sudden, the other spouse finds out one day they're thousands and thousands of dollars in debt and had no idea. You know, that's also a form of what's the word I'm looking for? Betrayal. You know. Thank you, Renee.
Yeah. Let's press pause for a second. Let me pray.
Let's do it.
Lord, we welcome you into this space, into this podcast, and we just ask that the people that are listening right now, that you would, that their ears and their heart would be sensitive to your voice. Pray that you would use us in this moment to deliver truth, God, and healing. We give these next few moments to you and ask that you do what needs to be done in our heart and in the listener's heart. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
We need to invite Jesus into this place.
Yes. So I think hurt, betrayal, you know, these things, these deep wounds come in various different forms, right? In packages, and some are, some may be irreconcilable, you know. Maybe there's some, especially when this happens not once but twice and 3 times, and sometimes there's just such an amount of betrayal that that's hard to come back from. Other times, you know, it's a one-time deal, it's a one-time offense. So again, we're not defining what the thing is that, you know, the spouse did that I can't forgive and move on, because we know that could be a lot of different things. But I had this thought, and I have my paper notes for those that are watching.
Yeah, we have our notes because this was our part of our sermon, and
Yes.
so we do want to stay on topic, and we want to read what we processed together and what we felt the Lord kind of deposited into us while we were prepping.
Yes, and I also have to pick up our children here soon a little bit. So.
Yeah, hallelujah.
A long-lasting marriage has a history with pain and hurt, regret, and offenses not easily moved on from. It's normal as sinners, you know, that's what each of us are, all of us are, right? To have hurt our spouse. It still hurts, though, and that doesn't take the sting away.
Yeah.
To just say, well, we're all sinners and we all mess up, and well, that's kind of belittling the hurt and the offense and the pain, right? I mean, that stuff is all real, and honestly, what we're really talking about today, I think, is forgiveness.
Yeah.
Now, we said a couple different times in this past weekend's sermon, when we were talking about the other question, there's a difference if you are in an abusive situation, right? So we're not talking about issues of abuse here per se. If you're in an abusive marriage, you know, that's just a different conversation.
Yes, a different conversation, and you need help. You need to ask for help. You need to reach out for help. You could even reach out to us and email us. Renee, what is our email? It's authenticU@myauthenticchurch.com. And if you need some resources for help, we can get you those resources. So
Let me ask you a question, off topic but on topic. Are there people, because you're so much smarter with this stuff than I am, are there people that are in abusive relationships and don't know? Yeah. That'd be interesting to help define that on a Sunday morning sometime.
yeah.
You know, it's like you don't even realize the situation you're in. It's like it's almost like the frog in the kettle as the heat, is going up and you don't realize you're dying.
Yeah.
Right? Be interesting to wrestle with that at some point. But anyway, so these are for things that they're great offenses, they're great hurts, but you feel the Lord has put together this covenant relationship, and you've got to figure out how to fight through this, love through this, process through this, right? Deal with this. And so you have a little something here talking about what forgiveness is. You want to talk about that for a moment?
Yeah. The first point that we have for this question is that forgiveness is a choice.
Right.
Forgiveness is a choice. And this doesn't mean, I want to clear this. I want to clear this up. This does not mean that the person is not guilty, but it means we choose to release them to God and release the offense. Because holding on to the offense doesn't heal us, but it keeps us in this cycle of hurt, right? And unforgiveness. Oh, the ice cream truck is
I hear him
coming through. Shout out to the ice cream truck. But, holding on to offense, it really does more harm to us than it does to the person who offended us. I mean, there's even we can even be physically sick from unforgiveness, harboring unforgiveness. And the question, I was really not bothered, but I was just like, how the question was worded. How do I forgive and move on? But it's not about moving on, but it's allowing ourselves to move forward, right? I don't think when someone offends us, we are to say, well, you just need to get over that and move on, right? Well, there's a process that we need to go through, and in order for us to move forward, right? Moving on to me is not acknowledging the thing. Moving forward means I'm acknowledging it, but I'm going to release it as I move forward, right? And forward towards peace. Forward towards peace. The second point was unforgiveness is a prison.
Can we pause for a second? Because I want to kind of jump in there on something, because I'm in my 40s now, and so I'm well aware that forgiveness is a choice, not necessarily a feeling. But it probably wasn't until I was in my 20s that I started to realize that and know that. Do you think, for me, I always felt like, forgiveness is something that over time occurs. No, but it's not. It starts with day one saying, you know what? I forgive you. And doesn't forgiving get easier? Do you think it gets easier once you do it?
Yeah, because
when you deal with more people, like you've been there before, you've experienced this hurt before.
Yes. The thing is, some people think that forgiving someone means that that they're not guilty of the thing that they've done. And so they're releasing them from that guilt. No, they will reap what they sow. It is about us releasing ourselves and really doing what the Lord commanded us to do, right? And it's to forgive as he has forgiven us.
Right.
That's a huge thing. Do I feel like forgiving you or a person that has hurt me? I don't feel like it, but I have to choose to forgive. And really, it really isn't about, now I can just let them, be free and do their thing. No, it's I have to release myself from the prison of unforgiveness, because unforgiveness, I'm telling you, it's like a cancer. It will eat you up. If you harbor unforgiveness, especially for your spouse, it will bleed into every area of your marriage, every area of your relationship with your spouse. If there is something that, and this has happened to me, if you did something to me and I just held on to that and I didn't choose to forgive you, that stuff festers and it comes out in the way I speak to you, how I speak to my children, how I view marriage.
Let me ask you a question. Do you think that you can choose to forgive someone, but for the rest of your life deal with anger or hate or whatever, whatever other word you want to use towards that person? Or do you think making that choice to forgive someone begins to release you of all of that?
So when I chose to forgive some of the pains that have happened to me, specifically in our marriage, when I said, I choose to forgive, this is where the power of when I obey the Lord, man, he rewards my obedience. And he told me, I am to forgive as I forgive you, right? When he rewards me, I have seen a big difference in my anger towards you, in my bitterness, in my whatever. So to say that I'm just going to be angry the rest of my life, I think there's something deeper there, right? I think forgiveness is something that in certain situations, and specifically for me, I had to choose daily for a while until I really felt a breakthrough of like.
What do you say to people that would say that seems weak?
Manny, poor Manny's out there.
Oh, our youth director, but he's gonna come in.
He's gonna come in the shot. That's okay.
That's okay.
That's okay. Listen, we ain't fancy here. Say hi to the camera. You just walk through.
Camera's on. Hi, Manny. What do you say to somebody that would say that's weak? Okay, so let me give you an example. We had this horrible, once again, mass shooting that took place. It happened up in Maine, and I was reading about it and kind of following the story, and there was a father of one of the young men that was murdered, and he said that I have already chosen to forgive this shooter for taking my son's life. Basically, what else am I going to do?
Yeah.
And a lot of people would view that as weak. Like, man, you should be angry. He took your son. This is such a great offense, But as I was reading about what he was saying, I mean, it sounded like someone who has lived in forgiveness throughout his life. You don't just do that for the first time ever in a situation like that, right? And I think he was wise enough to understand, man, I have to forgive. And he basically was saying, what else am I going to do?
Yeah.
Am I going to live in this prison of unforgiveness?
Absolutely.
But what would you say to people that are just like angry and just, man, they want justice for what happened? My spouse did this to me and I want my spouse to pay, or, whatever that may be. Or I don't want to let it go. The pain was too great, and I need you to know for the next however many months and years what you did to me. And you know what I mean?
That's actually easier to do. And to me, that it is weaker.
Okay.
It takes a heck of a lot of strength and bravery to look at your offender and say, I forgive you.
Yeah.
I do want to point something out. Just because you choose to forgive doesn't mean that you're not going to go through the feelings that come with the pain that has happened to you.
Right.
So like to say, well, I choose to forgive so the anger is gone, or the sadness is gone, or the lump in my throat or the knot in my stomach is just miraculously gone. I'm not saying that the Lord can't do that, but in most situations, this is why it's important to choose. And once you choose, you go on this journey of healing.
Right.
On that journey of healing, when you have a community, when you submit to the Lord, you can process these natural emotions that were given to us by God, right? But those emotions cannot control us.
Right.
It is when those emotions control us, then we are in a prison now. Now we're in the prison of, unforgiveness.
So in a marriage setting, this is what this is about. This is a marriage series, sermon series, and a marriage podcast this week anyway. Sometimes the offense is so great, the betrayal is so great that it can be, not fixable.
Yeah.
Right.
There's I know lots of people. I have people in my life, God-fearing, loving Christian people, but the offense was so great that, yes, the marriage they weren't able to put the marriage together, but that doesn't mean that they that they live the rest of their lives, even though they're not married anymore, in unforgiveness, because that stuff will bleed out into every other space into your life.
Right.
So, and again, this is not releasing the person from the thing that they did. This is not, we're not God, right? It's, I am choosing to forgive you. I'm choosing to forgive you, not because I think you're the greatest person on earth. I'm choosing to forgive you because God has commanded me to, and I submit to him, and he is my authority. And so I have to I forgive them, because when I release that person to the Lord, he deals with them. And I have seen it in other relationships in my life. Does that mean that I wasn't mad, or sometimes things, and that is some of the stuff that we were supposed to be talking about, like different triggers and things like that. I'm not sure we'll get to that because we're kind of out of order at this point.
Because I have one more question I'm going to throw at you that's going to be a doozy.
Yeah.
That I want to see if you're not ready for it, we can punt to another day. But
okay.
You ready?
Sure. I'll tell you now. We can answer that later because we only have minutes left on this thing.
Minutes? Nah, we're good. We're good. We got at least 20 here. Can forgiveness be a prison? Your whole concept here is unforgiveness is a prison, but can forgiveness be in prison? And what I mean by that is, I believe that potentially some marriages, the victim of the betrayal was encouraged to stay in the marriage because there was a covenant vow that was made, and to forgive and to move on, quote unquote, or whatever. And then they ended up staying in a situation that they never should have stayed, you know? So for example,
yes.
when you talk about unfaithfulness, right?
Yeah.
An affair, a second affair, you know, that kind of a thing, or whatever. And as you process that, as you think about that, the Bible tells us that is biblical grounds for separation. There's not a lot of biblical grounds for separation and divorce, but that is one of them. And that doesn't mean you have to, right? I think there's some amazing marriages out there, amazing relationships that have experienced that type of hurt and pain. And the Lord spoke to that wife or spoke to that husband and said, hey man, stay the course, forgive her. Go back to like, Hosea or whatever.
Yeah.
And Gomer and that whole story, like pursue her, even in her unfaithfulness, even in his unfaithfulness. I want you to, you guys are gonna get this right, you know. But I really think that's like a real calling from God. You know, I think when one spouse has been really betrayed, or I think I don't think it's a black and white, well, stay with your spouse.
No.
Right? But the church, I'll just jump in just 1 second. The church sometimes, and pastors and parents and friends sometimes can give that type of advice. Well, let's just fight through this. You need to fight through this. You need to battle through this. And you need to forgive. And now a spouse can find themselves in a situation where they probably should have left the relationship, but were made to feel guilty about staying in the relationship and forgiving.
Yeah.
I know we're kind of off topic from our notes, but it's a podcast, right? We're able to do that. So again, if that's too much, we need to punt. We can. Well,
you answered it.
But
you answered a lot of it. What I was gonna say.
Well, jump in. I didn't hear. I didn't hear myself talking.
No. Tag on chords. You hit the nail on the head, and we were talking about this probably this morning. Man, don't come for me. Don't, if you're a church person that is raised in the church, don't come for anybody's credentials up in this piece, okay? I am going to tell you what we have done wrong, and we need to address it as a church. As a church, sometimes we mess things up. And sometimes we cover abuse, or we cover betrayal in just stick it out, move on. Jesus would have forgiven her. Jesus would have forgiven him, right? And what happens is it creates this toxic marriage that this person said, that the church said that I needed to stay through this and just press on, when the spouse that did the offense had no desire for reconciliation. They had no desire.
Or maybe they said they did, but they really didn't.
Oh yeah, and most times they're like, I got you,
right.
I'm gonna.
Because they got caught.
Because they got caught, right? And there's no real desire. So now the person that maybe church folk said, just stick this out. There's kids involved, blah blah whatever. Just wait if he or she does this again, and then he or she does it again, and man, just grace of God, the Lord's forgiveness is great, and it's whatever. And now this person is in 30 years of utter mess, abuse at this point, okay? And then we wrapped it up in, well, the Bible says that you cannot get divorced. Let me tell you something. I know people, okay, who have been manipulated, betrayed over and over and over and over again. And the people that they have come to for counseling has said, stick it out, see if he changes. The problem is he never did. And so now that thing is not only has bled out into his marriage, now it's bleeding out into their children. Now it's bleeding out into other areas of their life. And so we really have to be careful. Yes, we need to forgive to release that person. Remember, this is not about the person. This is about I'm choosing to forgive because God has told me I need to forgive. So if you have offended me, I need to release you to God. I can't hold myself captive in prison, right? But we really need to be careful that yes, we're to forgive, but there's a difference between forgiving and then being taken advantage of, right? You can forgive, but you can also take an action step afterwards, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, it goes back to the old adage of, you can forgive someone but not remain in a relationship with them.
Absolutely, but you can. If someone does something to me, well, this is a marriage case. If you do something to me to offend me, to hurt me, right? To be, you betrayed me or whatever, right? And I forgive you. I have chosen to forgive you. I have to give you a boundary here. I have to place a boundary like, hey, I forgive you. I love you and I want to make this work. You can't do this to me again. So here's what I need you to do. I need you to go to marriage counseling and we need to do this together. If you don't, then we're going to have to talk about another step we need to take in our marriage, right? Mm-hmm. I think the people that just, I forgive you, with no action steps, with no boundaries, with no consequences given to the person that has offended them, the person's just going to do what they're allowed to do over and over and over again.
All right, let me throw another hard question at you.
This is not supposed to be an interview. We're supposed to go through.
But you're doing so good. I'm so proud of you. You're crushing this right now.
Renee Moore, you're the producer. Why don't you? You got no mic. Why aren't you shutting this down?
What do you say to the man or woman that's in a marriage relationship that has been the victim of betrayal after betrayal, but stays because they're afraid of the unknown and a life without that spouse?
I need to tell you, I don't think there's here's what you need to do.
Right,
I think I am overstepping and that would be inappropriate for me to say, this is what you need to do.
Right.
I do want to say this to that person. So if you are that person that is listening, mm-hmm. I do need you to hear this. You're not alone. This is a real feeling that you are having. Mm-hmm. And the unknown is a scary place. But there are so many rewards and blessings when we take a step out into the unknown. Mm-hmm. And when God is for us, and he is for you, sister, he is for you, brother, okay? He will provide for you. This does not mean that you will not be on a journey of, figuring out how to release this pain.
Right.
Because any kind of relationship that we have to remove ourselves from, it doesn't even have to be a marriage, any relationship, that is painful. And we will have to walk that out and mourn that. But the unknown, although it is a very scary place, it is not a lonely place because we all fear that, okay? And so I'm not going to answer what you need to do, okay? I am going to say, if you love the Lord, I'm telling you right now, he will provide for you in ways that you cannot fathom during the season of pain that you're in.
Including giving you an answer to what you should be doing. Because
yes,
at the end of the day, you and I have been doing ministry a long time now. We've met with so many people and so many couples. And I can think of countless couples who have had multiple, like more than 1, 2, 3, affairs outside of their marriage, cheating, like betrayal. And at this, and even like children outside of marriage, like this guy's now he's got a son that is not his wife's, he's got this, and his kids have this half brother now, or, the other way around, and their marriage is great. They're in their 40s, they're in their 50s, they're in their 60s, they're empty nesters now. And they look back, and it goes back to what I was saying before about any marriage has a history of, any marriage has been around a long time, has a history of hurt and pain in it, And so sometimes the answer really is truly we're going to stick this out, and we're going to tell a great story one of these days. And that son is not going to be, can I say bastard? That's what it is, right? That son's not going to be looked at and viewed as some bastard. No, he's going to be welcomed into the fold. He's going to be welcomed into the family. He's going to be loved,
Because what the enemy meant for evil,
right.
God can turn it around for good.
Right.
And this is where forgiveness comes into play.
But on the flip side,
we
know couples that have been together for years, and the writing was on the wall. This isn't working out after all these betrayals and affairs and these different things, and you almost see someone's life kind of wither away. Now they're in their 40s and their 50s and their 60s and the empty nest season and all of that, and there's just a path of pain that if they could do it all over again, they'd probably say, you know what, I wish I would have made some changes in my 40s, in my 30s, whatever. So that's why, to me, it comes back to really, in anything in life we're walking through, to walk through it with Jesus.
Yes.
To walk by the side of that river and that creek with Jesus, to walk through the fire with Jesus, to no matter what we're going through, everywhere from the top of the mountain to the bottom of the lowest valley, man, we are walking with Jesus because he gives us access to the Holy Spirit who wants to be present and active among us.
Yes.
So that we're not making these decisions on our own. We're not making these decisions just because mom says to do this, or pastor so-and-so says to do this, or my husband or my wife says to do this. No, this is, man, I am able to tap in and listen to the heartbeat of God on this situation.
Yeah.
And I think if you aren't actively doing that daily and weekly, like that's not a rhythm of your life, and now you're thrown into the fire, and now you want access to the Holy Spirit when you don't even know what your shepherd's voice sounds like. And that seems to me like that's where a lot of marriages that are going through difficult situations sometimes find themselves. You haven't really, honestly, if you're being honest with yourself, really haven't been walking with Jesus all this time. I mean, you would say I'm a Christian, I follow God, but that open communication between us really hasn't existed. But now I need you, God, right? It's that now you're my crutch, and now I need you to help me get through the situation. And now you're looking everywhere and trying to listen everywhere for the voice of God, and that's not easy. So.
No, and a little side note, let me talk to the person that all they know is their toxic relationship. They don't know what a healthy relationship looks like. You are in a relationship that is in trouble if you are constantly being blamed for the other person's stuff. Your marriage needs some help if only one partner takes responsibility for their junk, right? Blame shifting is a huge thing in marriage. I see it all the time. I was just talking to someone today about how little kids blame shift and talk about how, this person did this to me, and they don't have the brain to say, well, how did I play a part in this, right? Healthy relationships exist. Healthy relationships exist under the authority of God. Okay? Healthy relationships exist under the authority of God. When both people submit to God and say, I don't have all the answers, but I know that I am to honor and respect and love my husband, or I am to love my wife as Christ loves the church, and I will submit to God and try to do that for the rest of my life. If we just take on some biblical principles, okay, not perfection, but if we take on some biblical principles, our marriages would flourish like fast, right? But we talked about this on Sunday. We deal as a people with selfishness.
Right.
Selfishness
Yep.
is a huge thing, right? You don't fulfill my needs. You didn't make me feel, a certain way. And so now I'm mad at you. You didn't fulfill the need that I needed in that season. So I went and I looked somewhere else. Like that is a common thing, right? Selfishness is not of God.
Right. Exact opposite.
It's selflessness is of the Lord. And you can listen to that. That's a whole other thing that's on our YouTube channel. But I'd like to wrap this up by doing some of these points on the notes here or from the sermon.
So we got a few minutes. I think it would be good just to ask that question again to remind us where we're at.
Yes.
I can do that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Help. I can't get over what my spouse did. How do I forgive and move on? And I think we've wrestled with quite a bit of this already.
Yeah.
What do you think we've missed? We've definitely talked about forgiveness and unforgiveness.
There was this point here. Unforgiveness hinders us from experiencing loving relationships.
Yep.
If we hold on to unforgiveness, our relationships suffer. But if we forgive, our relationships can thrive. Sometimes we hold on to unforgiveness as a way to justify and shield ourselves from pain, right?
Mm-hmm.
But really it isolates us from both God and other people while keeping us trapped in that pain and that sin, Unforgiveness keeps us from being intimate with each other. And I'm not only talking about physically intimate, I'm talking about emotionally intimate as well.
I experienced something this recently, obviously in a marriage context, but like a former student. I was a youth pastor for 20 years. And I had a student reach out to me because of something I had posted, on Facebook. And so we kind of talked a little bit. And he had found himself so kind of hurt by the church. And rightfully so. We spoke on the phone for probably 45 minutes. And the things he was sharing, I just felt, man, gosh, you know what I mean? As pastors, as a church, we just get this wrong sometimes, don't we?
Mm-hmm.
And but I really encouraged him to reach out to the people that specifically hurt him and forgive them, and to begin to let go of some of these things and turn it over to God. This was a young man who stopped going to church. He was always in church and stopped going to church. And I just encourage him, man, let it go, pursue God, pursue forgiveness. And recently he reached out to me and he said, hey, I took your counsel and I want to let you know I'm back in a local church, you know what I mean? And I have forgiven some people and I've really made some great strides, and I feel he's like, so you could just hear that the happiness in what he was saying, that like I was able to get past some of this because of the actions that I took, and I didn't allow unforgiveness to keep me in a place that I needed to be,
That is such a bait of Satan right there.
Mm-hmm.
is the offense. Like if Satan can keep us trapped in our offense, then he can blur our vision to the truth. Like if he can keep us from actually seeing the people that offended us as God sees them, then we will just remain in this cycle of offense. And it is such a bait of Satan, and that's how he keeps us trapped. That is how he keeps us full of anxiety. That is how he keeps us bound to things. That is how, if we're stuck in offense, we tend to numb that pain through different avenues, whether it be, drugs, social media, cell phones, alcohol, pornography, whatever it is, just to numb the pain instead of releasing that offense to the Lord and sometimes taking an action step, right? Like this young man took an action step. I'm sure that was very hard for him, but it wasn't about the person. It was about him living in freedom because his bondage kept him out of the thing that God was calling him to.
Well, it's also he owned his part of it.
Yes.
And that's a whole other topic we could talk about. But it's so funny we get into, well, I've got to figure out how to forgive her. How am I ever going to forgive her? And at the end of the day, like, own your stuff too. Because it's rarely 100% to 0%, right? The issues and the problems. Usually when something breaks bad, something happens, there is guilt, so to speak, error on both parties. Now, it could be 90-10, or whatever the percentages may be, but there's usually something you've got to own. Like, all right, I will own this part. I messed this up. I shouldn't have said that. I should have given you more attention when you asked for it. I should have done this, but at the end of the day, you still hurt me in this way. And if you're willing to make things right or whatever, I will forgive you, right? There's an ownership that has to take place, which he did, and I was proud of him.
Yeah, and let me make something clear with that. If someone has like sexually, physically abused you, there is no
abuse.
I need to clarify that here. That there's no 90-10 there.
No.
Right?
I'm not talking about abuse.
So I just need to clarify that on the pod here, because I know how people think.
No. I'm talking about betrayal.
Yeah. So
I'm talking about sin. I'm talking about, really messing up. I'm not talking about abuse. Abuse is different. We even said that last week a bunch of times during the sermon. I think we said it a couple times today. That's a totally different situation. We've got just a couple minutes. Was there anything else here that jumped out to you?
I do want to read the scripture, Luke 17:1. It says, Jesus said that it is impossible that no offense should come. Right. So it's not about whether we'll encounter offenses,
right?
Because we will. It's about how we react to them, right?
Right.
Our responses shape our relationships and our marriage. We can show the love of Jesus to our spouse through the act of forgiveness. Okay. I have actively chosen, and I'm sure you have too, actively chosen to forgive some things that were done that really hurt me, like deeply, right? And I have this in my notes, and I do want to say this. I want to talk about triggers being a real thing in marriage, right? Because it's important to get around a community or professional counseling to help with your hurt, right? Because once you forgive, or once you start moving forward in your relationship towards healing, that doesn't mean that things won't trigger you, right? And I've experienced this, I've experienced, although I have chosen to forgive, there was something, a word, a moment, an action, something that triggered me in that moment that caused me to go back to the moment of pain, right? And that is a real thing that I want to make sure that we acknowledge and we do not dismiss, because the whole moving on means you're not acknowledging the things that still might.
Right.
There's a trigger here, right? Because I am a human being. Remember, forgiveness isn't about now everything is perfected. No, I have to actively choose to forgive my offender, right? It gets easier as time goes on, right? And it has gotten easier. The Lord has even blessed me in certain things to now put to rest some of the things that have pained me, right? But I still find myself at times being triggered by certain things. I have to own that, and I have to, when I feel triggered, I call my person, and I will say, I feel triggered in this moment, and I need you to walk this out with me, because I have many avenues I can take right now. I can be really ticked off. I can go off. I can go into this deep black hole where I can't get out for a while, and now I'm just mad at everyone, and now it affects everything and how I speak, whatever. Or I can release it, verbalize it, go to my community, say, I need help. Can you help me with this? Can you pray for me? And that has happened to me. I have taken action steps to forgive, right? But triggers are a real thing.
I want to say this, and we can wrap up with this, I guess, because I've really got to go get the kids. Otherwise, they're going to have to walk home. triggers also come from previous relationships.
Yep.
And even like how you were raised.
Yep.
So there have been times where you've told me, I don't like this, or I don't like how you said that, and then left it at that, and I've thought, well, that's kind of weak. It's not really, I didn't say anything that was that big of a deal, or I wasn't really trying to do anything that was that big of a deal. And because I justify in my head as not just listening to you, of course I'm, hard-headed, and I'll say and do it again. There's been times where you say, hey, listen, can you sit down for a second? And you've spelled it out for me. This is why I don't like this, or I don't like you saying this, because it takes me back to this relationship. It takes me back to when I was a little girl and I was growing up in my home, and my mother or father might say something, or that's the issue. Yep. So a lot of times triggers aren't just, I hurt you in the past, you hurt me in the past. Sometimes a spouse can be triggering the other spouse and not even know it, and it could be something from the past.
This is why we have to submit to God first, and then we're able to submit to each other.
Right.
Because you don't have to know the reasoning. You just have to hear, hey, this bothered me.
Right.
And in your mind, you don't have to justify, well, that's dumb, that's weak, or whatever. It's my wife, the one that I've been called to love like Christ loves the church, has said this has affected her.
Right.
So I am going to pastor that. I'm going to shepherd that. I am going to treat her as Jesus would treat her in this moment. And I don't know why, but I'm going to find out. And that is why it's so important for us to fall under the authority of God, so then the couple can, with each other, submit mutually to each other and then to God. Separate from God, it is a hot mess. So get yourself some Jesus.
Alrighty. So I wrote a kid's book called Filbert the Mouse. Should be coming out sometime.
Are we doing a commercial?
No, we're not.
Oh.
I'm transitioning into a point.
Okay. Oh.
Yeah. And then we're going to end.
Like that.
Little self-promo along the way, though.
That's okay.
Filbert the Mouse is a kid's book that I wrote that'll be coming out hopefully in January.
Very proud of you.
Thank you. Pre-sales. We're hoping to have those up and ready in the next few weeks here, possibly.
Few.
And I know that if two people were doing a podcast and they used one of the main themes from my book and kept saying it over and over again, I might want them to give me a little shout out. So I do think, because we mentioned it in the sermon Sunday, and then we mentioned it today again, about offense being a bait of Satan. Mm-hmm. I think we should give your boy some props for writing a book on this, and also let the world know they should read John Bevere's Bait of Satan.
He's not my boy. I wish we were friends.
Yeah.
Bro, the access right there, the deposits of God would be amazing. But John Bevere, my homeboy in my head, shout out. He was like down the street a couple of months ago speaking. He hangs out in Florida, in Orlando, apparently. Yeah. John Bevere, you'll probably never listen to this podcast, but if someone knows, if you are John Bevere's cousin or something, please let him know that we are huge fans. He wrote a book. It is an old book, and I think it's revised. Is there a revised version? It's called The Bait of Satan. That book would transform your life and the lives around, and the people's lives around you. It is so amazing.
It's one of those must-read Christian books.
It is a must-read. Yeah. Now, it ain't for the faint of heart. That stuff is nasty, some of the things that comes out. And he also has a book, The Awe of God. Holy moly, I am processing that book. So shout out to that.
That's how you receive real healing, is really dealing with things.
Yeah.
So I have to go pick up the kids.
You have to go. You know what? Walk out of the...
Really?
Yeah, I think that'd be funny.
So I'm just going to get up and go?
Just get up and go. See what happens. Yeah, the headphones. Yeah, hold on. Hold on. Well, I'll keep talking for like 1 minute. I'll pick that up.
You'll pick all this stuff?
I'll pick all that stuff up for you.
I need my phone. My phone was hiding back here the whole time. Look at that.
But can you please show the massive jug of water that you were going to put in the shot? For those of you that are listening.
Yes. We don't just believe in emotional and spiritual health here, baby, but physical health, drinking lots of water.
How many ounces is that?
It's like a gallon.
He's got a gallon of... That's not a gallon. That's probably a gallon.
That's close.
It's a gallon of water in a blue jug.
Okay, bye.
Okay, bye. Do you want to say anything nice to me?
Oh, yeah, always. I love you.
He said, I love you. All right, here's the deal. He really had to go, and I just didn't want to abruptly stop. So you can hold on. You can push the button in a second. I'm talking to Renee in the background. But This series is, I think we have, 3 more weeks of this. I highly recommend you hop on our YouTube channel and check out all of the sermons that are going to that we're going to do on a Sunday, and then we will try our hardest to tackle some of the questions throughout the series on our pod. So that's it. Let's wrap this up. Let's say goodbye, because I don't have to pick up kids, but I do have a meeting that I'm kind of late for. Anyway, I love you guys. I am praying for your marriage this week. I hope that your marriage thrives, that forgiveness flows. I'll see you in the next session, or I will hear you in the next session. God bless you and goodbye.